Hello everybody, I have got a character creation guide for Divinity Original Sin Enhanced Edition. Now, I've actually done a complete walkthrough already, but I wasn't really happy with the character creation kind of portion of the first video. So I've just decided that I'm going to redo that and make a new one. So let's start this off. I'll be honest, I'm probably not going to continue on with this, but this is normally how I play. I play on Tactician mode usually. Actually, always. I've actually never played a different mode now that I think about it. So, anyways, alright, so we are going to make ourselves a couple of new characters here. Now, one of the things that I really like about this game is that your two main characters are just blank slates. The other thing is, to be completely honest, and it's kind of neat also, is that if you find yourself with a couple of characters that you're not all that happy with, and you don't want to completely restart the game, you can actually alter the two main characters as well, a little ways into the story. So, again, don't I guess be too worried if you aren't, or like you're getting a little bit into the story, you're not really happy with how your characters are turning out. Because again, and especially if it's your first time playing, because this game's got a pretty decent learning curve. So, you know, it can be kind of tough, I guess is what I'm trying to say from time to time. So, anyways, alright, we're going to make our first character here. And we're going to make this a female, because I always do. Given the option, I always do. The appearance and stuff, obviously, or maybe it's obvious, this stuff isn't going to affect your gameplay at all. But, yeah, we'll just, what do we want to go with here? Good enough. Not all hairstyles are as good as others. That should be obvious. Okay, wow. Pink? I don't think so. Maybe I should make this one. No, just go with white. Good enough. Alright. That looks good. So again, that stuff is not important at all. Starting skills here. I'm not going to bother with this stuff yet. This is going to completely change based on, I guess, how I decide to trick this character out. So these are the presets, though. So Witch starts out with Vampiric Touch, Summon Spider, and Oath of Desecration. I actually think that combination of skills isn't that bad. But that's not how I'm going to start out. And the reason for that is, if you notice here, this character's got a staff. So the preset is what determines what weapon you start with. And I want to start with dual wands. So this is not what I want then. Battle Mage, that's interesting. So that's a sword and board, or shield and sword. Cleric, kind of same deal. Here, Enchanter has one wand, which we're getting close. I want two, though, so I think, yeah, we have to go with the Inquisitor. So this says a daring wand wielding, risking life and limb to decimate evil head on. Okay, good enough. So once we've picked Inquisitor, and again, the reason for that is because I want the dual wands. I want to change up the actual skills. As well as attributes. So it looks here like the preset for the Inquisitor has a couple of points. This is probably 2 points in intelligence. It looks like 1 point in constitution, and then another 2 points in speed. But that's why these are green. So I'm going to remove these points, and we'll just talk about the different stats here as we go down. So strength says it governs melee damage. Oops, I don't want to put a point in there. So strength is heavily based off of, or I should say, the man-at-arms tree. is based heavily on strength. Let's go take a look at man-at-arms here. So that's under skills. I'm just going to remove these points as we go here. So here, where's that man-at-arms? Here we are. So determines how many man-at-arms skills you can learn and how many action points it costs to use higher level man-at-arms skills. So what does that all mean? Well, basically, if you only have 1 point into any of these trees are all kind of function similarly in that with 1 point, as you can see there, it's grayed out there at the bottom, but at level 1 it allows you to learn and use 3 novice, 0 adept, and 0 master man-at-arms skills. So there are 3 different tiers of skills. Maybe that's obvious now, but they are novice, adept, and master. The biggest pool of skills is at the novice level. I don't want to, maybe I'll take a stab and say there's like probably around 10 skills from novice. And then adept, you're going to have a smaller pool of skills, probably like maybe 5, maybe 6, something like that. And then master level skills, there's usually only about 3, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. I'll just have let's take a look here at what I can actually do. Let's remove some points from these other skills just to try to see if I can really bump up some of these. Alright, so this is 1 point in. Now you can see that, at level 1, again, you're going to be able to learn 3 novice, 0 adept, 0 masters. Now, you can see there at the bottom it says level 2 allows you to learn 5 novice, 2 adept, and 0 masters. Now, I'll be honest though, just off of character creation, we're not going to be able to get any of the adept or master man-at-arms skills. Just because that would be amazing, but unfortunately that's just not the way it's going to work. So I'm actually going to try to I can put one more. So if you notice here, from going from 0 to 1 only costs you, if you notice there up at the top it says available, so I've got 5 points available that I can put into my abilities. So going from 0 to 1 only costs 1. And again, it should be pretty obvious there. Up at the top there it says available now. There's only 4. Now if I want to go from 1 to 2 though, it actually costs 2 points. So maybe it's obvious from that, but going deep into trees gets extremely expensive as far as ability points. But I'm just going to show you that. There you go. So now we're down to 2 points. And unfortunately, going from 2 to 3 will require 3 points. So I'm not going to be able to go to 3. But here again, if you notice now, so now I've got 2. So it says it allows you to learn and use 5 novice, 2 adept, and 0 masters. And then if you look down at level 3, it says it allows you to learn and use 6 novice, 3 adept, and 0 master. So unfortunately, even at level 3, you can't learn any of the master skills. And I'm not sure if, I should say, I don't remember if you can learn any at level 4. I feel like you should be able to, but again, I'm not all that sure. But kind of an interesting thing, though, is how little you gain by going from level 2 to 3. Again, you're only going to get to use 1 extra novice and then 1 extra adept. Now, to be fair, though, not every tree has a whole lot of extremely useful skills. So, the fact that you're kind of reduced from, or you only gain 5 or one novice and 1 adept, I'll be honest, it just doesn't really matter that much. And again, most of these trees, you really want to get to the master skills because the master skills are usually pretty good. Again, usually. But, alright, so I'm going to take these points back out because this is not how I want to build my character anyway. And we're going to go back to attributes. So, I feel like I spent a ton of time on strength. So strength governs a lot of the master at arms. Actually, you know what? I want to do one more thing here. I want to put, I'll actually show you this. Skills, let's do masters. Because we've already been talking about master at arms, we'll talk a little bit about that. So here, this is obviously, I'm using the bumpers to get to, to change these different columns. So here are the master, or the man-at-arms skills, sorry. So battering ram is one of the more useful ones. So it says rush forward in a straight line to a point far away, hitting all enemies in your path. Now it says 3 to 5 fire there and 3 to 5 air damage. That's because I'm equipped with a fire and an air wand because I've gone with that Inquisitor. So that's going to change depending on your weapon or weapons. If you notice, though, down where in the red there, it says requires a melee weapon. And since wands are not melee weapons, I would actually not be able to use this battering ram skill with those weapons equipped. So again, that's pretty important to know, right? Especially when you're trying to make your characters. Basically, man-at-arms skills. I shouldn't. Wow, I was about to say that they all require a melee weapon, but that's not the case. Crushing Fist does not require a melee weapon, if you notice here. This is just basically a ranged attack. Now, the thing here, though, let's see here. 100% chance to set knockdown status for 2 turns. It costs 4 AP to use. A saving throw is bodybuilding. And then it's got a 7-turn cooldown. I think that would change if I had more strength, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Usually that's how that works, though. Usually your cooldowns are going to be affected by your actual stats. So again, with man-at-arms skills, they're generally influenced by your strength stat. So basically, if you want to make a tank or some sort of melee damage user, melee damage, that sounds funny. Any kind of like melee character. Short of if you want to go with like the scoundrel skills. The scoundrel skills are all about dexterity. But again, just talking about man-at-arms, generally you're going to want to stick to strength. So I feel like that's good enough as far as talking about man-at-arms stuff and strength. So let's talk a little bit about dexterity. It says here dexterity determines range damage. Basically, any weapon that is ranged, so I shouldn't say any, the bows, so there's crossbows and just regular bows, and those will be based off of your dexterity. One other thing that dexterity affects is your scoundrel skills here, so let's have a look here. So determines how many scoundrel skills you can learn and how many action points it costs to use higher level scoundrel skills. Oops. This is going to function just like man-at-arms in that, you're putting 1 point in allows you to use 3 novice, 0 adept, 0 master. So since we've already been over that, I'm not going to speak about that much more. But let's talk about the scoundrel skills here. So here you've got fast track. So because it says becomes hastened for a short while. That's a 100% chance to set hasten status for 2 turns. Now, the success rate of this, as well as the cooldown, is going to be affected by your dexterity. So let's see if that will actually change. I don't know if it will. No, it's not. So unfortunately, we can't see how that's going to be affected. I should say we can't see how putting points into these will affect our skills because we're not actually putting the points in, and they're not. Yeah, I guess it's not being accepted. So basically, what happens is as you level, after this, you'll be able to put points in, and once you've solidified those points, then you'll see how it affects your skills. But again, unfortunately, right now we're not able to see that. But again, it's just important to know that your cooldowns as well as cooldowns as well as success rates are cooldowns as well as success rates are determined by your stats. Okay, so let's move on here. I don't know if I want to dwell that much on these skills. I'm trying to just trying to show you guys or describe how these skills how the attributes affect skills and whatnot. Generally, generally the way it works is these, attributes will actually affect, again, it's the success rate as well as the cooldowns. So anyways, being that I'm going to build a dual wielding wand user, what I'm actually going to do, let's back up. So intelligence, here it even just says, determines magic damage. Oh, here we go. Here we go. I should have talked about this a bit more. So if you hit the Y, keep in mind I'm playing on the Xbox One, so if you hit the Y, it brings up these descriptions. So let's actually go back to strength. So it says strength determines your offense rating with strength-based weapons, improves man-at-arms skills and how much you can carry, increases the weight of items you can move and how far you can throw them. So of all of those different things that it affects, I would say strength, the real, again, if you're going with a man-at-arms build, any kind of tank, you're going to be focusing heavily on strength just because, and I think the big wins there, or the real important aspects of strength is the offense rating with strength-based weapons, and then the fact that it increases the man-at-arms skills. Basically, again, your cooldowns as well as success rates. The fact that it increases how much you carry is kind of irrelevant. You shouldn't really be weighing yourself down that much to the point where it's affecting you. You can always go back to town and sell your stuff if you start getting too heavy. Increases the weight of items that you can move. There are some portions of the game where that actually is important, and then how far you can throw them. But I will say there's one other stat or one other ability that you can use instead of the strength command for moving items, and that's telekinesis. We'll go over that a little bit more once we actually get there, but again, there are other ways of increasing the how far you can throw, and just even throwing certain items because of how heavy they are. And again, that's with the telekinesis. So anyways, let's go over dexterity quick here. Dexterity determines your offense rating with dexterity-based weapons. That should be obvious. Those are like your bows. Improves expert marksman. So those are your dexterity ranged weapons and skills, I guess. And then scoundrel skills is your more your melee type skills, and influences your defense rating. That's actually kind of important too, and that's kind of neat that it also adds to your defense. So even your tanks can kind of get a little bit of a benefit out of raising up their dexterity a bit. So there you can see right at the bottom, it even says that it's recommended for archers and rogues, and that just makes sense. So intelligence, this is all for casters. Improves elemental and witchcraft spells and your offense rating with intelligence-based weapons, and obviously recommended for spellcasters. There really just isn't that much more to say about intelligence. It kind of works the same way. It's going to reduce the cooldowns on your magic spells, as well as increases the damage and increases the success rate. So again, that's about all I want to say about intelligence. It's pretty self-explanatory almost. But anyways, Constitution. So increases your vitality and maximum number of action points. Now, action points are I would say it's kind of like the currency that you use to use your abilities. There isn't like a mana in this game. There's health, obviously, and Constitution affects that. And but there's a maximum number of action points, and then there's your kind of like your action point regeneration. And that's speed. So Constitution just increases the maximum amount of action points that you can have, so it just increases your pool. While I don't find that incredibly useful by itself, the combination with speed and Constitution can make it, I should say, having more speed can kind of require you to need more Constitution. So if you get so fast that you actually are gaining more action points per turn than your pool, well, then you've got an issue there. But the offset to that would be having so much Constitution but not having very much speed. That's not that helpful, though, either, because, okay, great, you've got a huge pool of action points that you can, technically have, but you're not going to generate that much. That can be, it can be helpful during the early points of a battle where maybe you want to let enemies come to you. And if you've got a really big pool, you can basically just skip your turn and keep your action points for the next turn, which at that point you'll have a huge pool of action points, again, if you've got, a decent amount of constitution. So anyways, I think that, again, I think constitution as well as speed kind of go hand in hand in a way. So here, speed increases your movement speed, initiative, and how many action points you gain per turn. I widely regard speed as the most important stat. And the reason for that is you can just, you'll generate more action points per turn because of it. And so we'll just say, for instance, you normally only generate 4 action points per turn. Well, every 2 points of speed you put into your character, you'll get 1 more action point per turn. And again, why is that important? Well, the more action points that you have in any given turn means the more actions you can actually perform. So again, I widely regard speed as the most important stat. And then on top of that, so speed affects your movement speed. So movement speed is basically how many or how far you can move per point of action. So if hopefully that makes sense, but just by moving around the battlefield, it costs action points. And again, the more speed that you have, the farther that you can actually move per point of, action point. So, all right, so that's basically speed. Perception affects your critical chance, initiative, start action points in combat, ability to detect traps, and accuracy when shooting over long distances. So, perception is actually a very, very good skill as well. Critical chance I actually really like. Critical hits in this game, just like basically any other, are incredibly powerful. So, perception is actually very useful. Initiative generally, if I'm remembering correctly, initiative is basically determines your combat order. So the more initiative you have, the earlier your turn will come up in combat. Start action points in combat. So basically, right when you start out combat, the higher amounts of perception will increase how many action points you get. Ability to detect traps. Sort of useful. I'll be honest, there are a lot of traps in the game, and having more perception to detect those is not a bad thing. So I don't know that I would specifically put points into perception because of that, but it's kind of a nice added bonus that you get. And then accuracy when shooting over long distances. Now, I've actually literally never made an archer, so I don't know how much perception helps out with accuracy. But yeah, I don't know. So, but apparently that's a helpful stat to have. See, I'm getting hung up on see hidden details. Oh yeah, and it doesn't actually say there. So perception can also help you. It's kind of funny that it doesn't actually say that, but perception actually can help you find like buried hidden treasures or I guess it kind of works like traps, right? Where you can see things that you normally wouldn't be able to see. So, all right. Well, that's about it for stats. Now, let me just pump a couple points in here. I'm going to go with 9 speed. So, the base speed is 5. By going up to 9, I'm going to get an extra 2 action points per turn. Yeah, that's going to be nice. And then I'm actually going to do, let's see here. I think I'm going to put 1 point into my dexterity. I know this is a very strange choice for a caster, but the reason why I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to, well, maybe I won't. No, I'm not going to do that. No, yeah, we'll just go with intelligence. Normally, so actually what I usually like to do is put a point into dexterity because I like to go with the scoundrel Walk in Shadows ability, and having a better starting dexterity would increase the success rate of that. Actually, you know what? I am going to do that, and for that exact reason. Alright, so let's take a look here. Weapons. Okay, so let's go over weapons. Bows, again, this is almost self-explanatory here. Bow increases the damage you do during bow. So, at level 1, boosts your damage by 10%. Alright, so let's put a point into this, just so you can see. So if you put 1 point in, you get a 10% bonus to your damage. At level 2, it boosts damage by 20%. So, we're only actually, I mean, we could put 2 points in here, and you could get a 20% damage increase, which is, you know, pretty beefy. But that would cost, you know, that's going to cost 3 points. So I'm not going to do that. But again, I just wanted to show you guys kind of how that works. Crossbows increases the critical chance and critical damage you do during or by using crossbows. So at level 1, it gives you a 10% crit chance and sets base critical strike multiplier to 220. So I think your base critical strike multiplier is 200. So I think, anyways, so that should mean you do double damage with crits. Now, by putting just 1 point into crossbows, not only does it increase your crit chance, but it also boosts your crit damage. So let's just take a look there. Yeah, to 220. So doing just 1 point in there gives that, I mean, that's a massive boost if you're going to use crossbows. I mean, a 10% crit chance, and then, you know, you get the 220 for the crit damage. Now, going from 1 point to 2 points, though, it only actually gives you another 4% crit chance, and then if you notice, another 20% crit damage. So that, I mean, that crit damage really starts to stack up. So at level 3, it's basically the same boost that you get by going from 1 to 2. You get an additional 4% crit chance, and then another 20% to your crit strike multiplier. So, again, I've never actually used a crossbow or any bows of any sort, but those sound pretty good. Now, maybe it's obvious, especially if you've played any other games, but bows are two-handed weapons, so you will not be able to, you know, you won't be able to be dual-wielding crossbows. So, again, keep that in mind. Dual wielding. Dual wielding reduces the damage penalty and action point cost when wielding 2 weapons. So, basically, every weapon has a certain amount of action points that it costs to use. And when you dual wield, unfortunately, you basically suffer a penalty in 2 ways. Number 1, you get a damage penalty. And then on top of that, you get a AP penalty as well for attacking. By putting more points into this, it actually reduces those penalties. So even just at level 1 there, if you notice, sets dual wielding damage penalty to minus 20% and reduces the cost of attacking by 1 AP. Level 2 sets dual wielding damage penalty to 20%, so it's the same. It actually doesn't change your dual wielding damage penalty, but it does reduce the cost of attacking by 2 AP. So that might not seem like much, but that adds up. And then here at level 3, though, there it finally reduces your damage penalty to 10%. So you'll actually, technically, you'll be doing 10% more damage when you go from level 1 to when you go from level 2 to level 3. But then your cost of attacking per AP doesn't change for that. I won't, again, you know, so I'm actually only going to be able to talk to that point, but basically the dual wielding damage penalty will be completely negated. I don't know if that's at level 4 or if it's at level 5. And then I think you get an attack point reduction total of 3 eventually as well. So dual wielding becomes one of my favorite styles because of that. Alright, so let's talk single-handed. Increases damage when using a single-handed weapon, dagger, sword, axe, or mace. The damage bonus is not applied when dual wielding. So, you cannot use the single-handed weapon style with the dual wielding together. because it will just or it'll completely negate whatever you would normally get from single-handed. So this is really going to be for your tanks. You know, if you want to do a like a sword and a shield, this is kind of the weapon style that you want to stick with then. Boost damage by 10%, and then a second point would do 20. So this looks, yeah, it looks like it just increases your damage by 10% every time. So that's actually pretty good. Oops. Alright, so let's check out two-handed. Now, I think, yeah, two-handed is basically the same as, or you get the same bonuses as with crossbows. So it gives you a 10% crit chance boost and sets base critical strike to 220%. So again, same bonuses as crossbow. It's just this weapon, these weapons are different. It's like a two-handed sword, two-handed axe, a spear, or a staff. I don't think that you know, if you're using a staff, I don't recommend using two-handed, or I don't recommend putting points into this. I think that's silly. But again, if you're using like a two-handed sword or axe or a spear, I think that this makes sense. So yeah, again, same exact bonuses that you get by putting points into crossbow. Wand, same deal as with the single-handed or just the regular bow, in that every point you put in here increases your damage by 10%. So I think I'm going to put 2 points into dual wielding here. And I'll do 1 point into wands. Maybe not. Maybe we'll do 1 into dual wanding. Or dual wielding. Dual wanding. That's cute. Anyways, alright, so let's move on to defense. Armor specialist. Improves your armor rating and decreases your heavy armor movement penalty. This is great for tanks. Or really, I mean, it's good for anybody using heavy armor, but I don't think that it really adds enough to kind of be worth it. So if you notice there, +3 to armor rating and minus 20% movement penalty. So actually it's really good for you know, characters that still want to get around the battlefield. Unfortunately, heavy armor, while it's got really good defensive stats, it is heavy, and so it's harder to get around the battlefield, or it's harder to get around to like the targets that you might want. There's ways to get around that, specifically with the man-at-arms skills. If you've got, I think was it charge? I think it's charge. Let's go take a look here. Oh, battering ram. I'm sorry. So it's battering ram. So that gets you around without actually, you know, spending or points just moving. So that's kind of nice. But there, if you notice, there level 2 is +6 armor rating and then minus 40% movement penalty. So you get a decreased movement penalty, and obviously a little bit more armor rating, but not much. So bodybuilding improves your saving throws against knockdown, burning, frozen, bleeding, crippled, blinded, weak, diseased, infected, and drunk. This is actually a pretty decent stat. So if you notice there at level 1, it reduces the chance to receive a status by 15%. Again, that's a pretty decent bonus to your resistances. Here, I mean, level 2, it's another 15%. So it looks like these bonuses are all additive, which is nice. Receive, yeah, status by 40. So it just adds 15% every time you put a point in there. So again, that's actually pretty decent. That's a good stat to have. Unfortunately, the status effects in this game are pretty brutal. They're I mean, knockdown is one of the more brutal ones, because not only can you not do anything when you're knocked down, but you take increased damage when you're knocked down as well. So yeah, again, bodybuilding is actually a really good defensive stat. So real good, and I wouldn't even just say it's good for tanks. It's really good for everybody. Shield specialist. All right, so shield specialist increases the chance of blocking when using shields. So at level 1, it gives a 5% block. And it looks like it's an additional 5% for every point that you put in here. I don't know. This is, I mean, it's good. Again, if you're a tank especially, but it gets expensive and you don't get a whole lot out of it, so that's sometimes hard to justify. But anyways, alright, so willpower improves your saving throws against feared, mute, charm, stun, curse, slowed, petrified, decaying, touch, mark of death, remorse, and shackles of pain. So this basically covers the other status effects, that bodybuilding doesn't cover. And it looks like the bonuses are the same. You gain 15% for every level. I think I misspoke earlier when I said for every point that you put in, because that's not accurate. It's the levels. Some of the more brutal status effects. I mean, stunned is brutal because again you can't do anything. Feared, I don't know that I've ever been feared. There's ways to keep your main characters from ever being feared, and that's with the and I can't remember what they're called. It's something with your personality traits, but and you don't actually get those until you start doing quests. They're kind of quests anyway. But alright, mute's pretty brutal, especially if you're a caster. Just can't cast spells. Charmed is absolutely brutal. It's one of the worst status effects in the entire game. Your charmed characters will actually switch sides and fight for the enemy. And on top of that, they'll use like grenades and stuff sometimes out of your inventory. So charmed is really brutal. The rest of those aren't as nasty as charmed. But anyways, again, willpower just covers a lot of the status effects that's not covered by bodybuilding. I'm not going to put any points into those. So Aerothurge determines how many Aerothurge spells you can learn and how many action points it costs to use higher level Aerothurge spells. I believe all of these basically say the same thing. It's just, these are specific to basically. So Aerothurge is wind spells. There's some other good skills with Aerothurge. Teleport being one of them. Teleport is one of the most useful spells in the entire game. I don't know if we can get that right away. Well, let's find out. Because that would be... Nope. Oh, there it is. Yeah, you can. That's so good. Huh. Yeah, that's tempting. We'll see here if I decide to go with that or not. Yeah, but that's really good. Yeah. Alright, anyways, let's go back here. So again, these basically are all, they work the same way as Man-at-Arms, and we already went on a long discussion about how Man-at-Arms works, but Aerothurge is, goes off your intelligence. Expert Marksman, this is Dexterity. Geomancer is another caster type school. Yeah, I think maybe we'll just go over those once I get into the actual skills a bit more. But Aerothurge, Geomancer, Hydrosophist, Pyro, and Witchcraft are all based off of your intelligence scores. I'm going to put 1 point into Geo. Since this is my main character, I think I'm going to put one into Hydro as well so I can heal. And then I'm tempted to go with Scoundrel as well, but it's tough. I did put that 1 point into Dexterity, so I intended to do that, but we'll see here. Actually, I would say one thing about this is, or with my specific build here, the good thing with going with a Scoundrel or a point into Scoundrel would mean that I could use, I think it's Walk in Shadows. Yeah, Walk in Shadows here. So basically it makes you invisible for 5 turns, which is really nice. There's one other way, though, to make yourself invisible, and that's with the invisibility spell. And I believe that's Aerothurge. Unfortunately, though, you can't get it right away, which is annoying. And I don't know if that's a novice spell or if it's a... what's the next one up? Oh, no, I can't remember. Adept. Jeez. So we'll see. But yeah. Actually, I'm going to decide that right now. I need to find out what level or what spell invisibility is. Alright, so I just had to look. Invisibility is unfortunately an adept level spell, so I am actually going to do the scoundrel version instead. Okay. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to go with here. I'm going to go with Geomancer because I want to summon, and then Hydro because I want to be able to heal, and then Scoundrel because I want that invisibility spell. So let's talk personality. Bartering. Now, I think this is completely worthless. You can get an infinite amount of money in the game. So, bartering, it's probably exactly what it sounds, but here it actually does describe it pretty well. At level 1, trader items are 10% cheaper, and they will give you 10% more for yours. Now, what I will do eventually is make a character that is a crafter as well as a sort of a merchant. So I think that's extremely useful in this game to have certain characters set up to do specific jobs and to kind of, specialize. So generally what I do is I have my battle squad. So those are the ones that run around and, do all the heavy lifting. And then I've got one character that I will make into a kind of a merchant / crafter. And again, the reason for doing that is because that way you can make your battle team even more powerful, and you don't have to kind of water them down with different crafting and like blacksmithing points and stuff. So again, I would say that bartering is not useful for anybody but whoever you want to make as your merchant, I guess, character / crafter, which is again one person that I'll end up doing, and that's or making into is his name is Jahan, and he's a character that we get early on. So again, that's my recommendation anyway. Again, I would not put any points into bartering. Charisma determines the first impression you make on people and your talent for charming, intimidating, and reasoning. Now, your first impression that you make on people, that is only useful, in my opinion, for buying and selling. Basically, the impression, or it's kind of like a stat based on how much people like you. And you can actually just donate gear to people to increase how much they like you. And the reason why that's actually useful is because once you've maxed out a person's, again, I don't know what number they've called it, but you can actually see it when you speak to people and try to barter with them. But that number that they start out with is increased if you have more charisma, and then increased, I believe, on your reputation stat. But I don't quote me on the whole reputation thing, because I actually don't know. I don't know if reputation really affects much of anything at all. But that was my impression. But anyways, the more important thing I would say is that charisma does increase your odds of success with charming, intimidating, and reasoning. So charming, intimidating, and reasoning are all like, they're kind of like dialogue options. So basically you play this game with people in certain circumstances, and basically there's one of 3 ways that you can interact with them. And some things have more bonuses than others. I tend to find that charming is one of the more popular ones, or one of the more useful stats of the 3. But charisma affects all of those. So basically every point of charisma that you have increases your charming, intimidating, and reasoning abilities by 1. So it's kind of a blanket stat, which is, again, kind of nice. But at the end of the day, this stat is useful for really getting more experience out of people. But the one thing that you can do when you get into these specific conversations is you can save your game. And then if it doesn't work out, you just reload your game and try again. So again, I don't recommend putting any points into charisma for that exact reason. You never actually need it. Your points are better spent elsewhere. On the other hand, leadership gives you a boost to party members and friends that can see you. So as long as your party members are within a range of you, and you've got this at least 1 point into leadership, you'll give your allies bonuses. So at level 1, it boosts initiative and damage. I'm actually going to Well, we'll go over this a little bit more once I make my second character, because I don't want to pull points out of my main character. So I kind of show you the different bonuses that you get with leadership. Lucky Charm is, so it determines your luck in finding extra treasure and improves your offense rating. Now, the whole finding extra treasure, that's okay, but again, you can get an infinite amount of money in this game anyway, so I don't find that particularly useful. But the fact that it improves your offense rating is pretty decent as well. I think that there's kind of better ways to do that, but Lucky Charm is one of those things that oftentimes you'll get on like your boots, and when you get it, it's just a nice bonus. So, all right, craftsmanship. Again, this is another one of those, or this is another heading where I would not put points into this stuff at all. I don't think that it's useful, but blacksmithing is all about making things. There's basically two ways to make things. One of them is blacksmithing, that's making weapons as well as some pieces of armor, and then crafting is the other. I've been meaning to do a full crafting guide, and I think that'll really do a better job of explaining, or I should save it for that. But as far as when you actually go to make your character, again, I would not recommend putting any points into crafting or blacksmithing. I think that's a role that it's worth having one specific character for, that being, I would say, Jehan. Lore Master, same deal though. I would say that it's not worth putting points into Lore Master. There's a ton of different gear in the game that you'll be able to get that'll have points of Lore Master. And I believe there's actually one character that starts with a few points in Lore Master as well. So I think that, if you want to identify your gear, you just stick to that character. Although there will be a lot of gear in the game that will require your, a Lore Master to identify. If you notice there, it says to identify, use an identifying glass on the item. So identifying glasses are found basically everywhere, and you only need one. So once you get that one identifying glass, you are good to go for the rest of the game. Now, telekinesis. Okay, telekinesis is basically the another way of picking things up and throwing them around if you don't have a whole lot of strength. So basically the more points you get into telekinesis, it even says there, the higher your telekinesis score, the heavier items you can lift, and the farther you can actually throw them. Now, this is one of those stats where I think it's great if you just randomly find pieces of gear that have it on, but I don't recommend actually putting any points into this. I just don't think it's worth it. Nasty Deeds, same deal with, I would say, with the blacksmithing crafting. I think that it's useful to have one specific character, and that is, I can't remember his name, of course, but we will get basically a thief, and I would say that leaving him to do all this stuff is worthwhile, because this is basically most of the time anyway. It's basically stuff that you're going to be able to do in town. And so I think that having a specific character to do those is useful, because then again, you don't have to put points into the stuff that you could be putting in other places. So lockpicking, exactly what it sounds. You need a lockpick, and that's it. That's an item, and then you can actually unlock doors with it. So again, that's sometimes useful. Pickpocketing, the same thing. So basically, the higher your pickpocketing is, the better the success rate is, as well as higher points into pickpocketing, and just increases the amount of stuff that you can actually steal from that person. If I remember correctly, you can actually only pickpocket a person once, so that's why the actual having more points into pickpocketing is more useful. Because again, if your pickpocketing is super low and you try to pickpocket somebody, there's a chance that you won't actually be able to grab everything from them. Now, again, because I think there's only actually specific examples in the game, or specific times where pickpocketing is extremely useful, because there's more than one way to skin a cat in this game that you'll find out. And oftentimes you can either just kill somebody for what they've got, or get it in another way. So Again, I think pickpocketing, lockpicking, and blacksmithing, crafting all kind of fall under the same thing where it's good to have one person. Sneaking I find almost completely useless. Determines how well you can sneak without getting caught, and a higher level sneaking improves your movement speed while sneaking and shrinks NPC sight cones. So, again, I don't recommend putting any points into sneaking. I just don't think it's useful at all. Alright, so let's talk talents. I'm going to remove these. Arrow recovery. This is great for your archers. So arrow recovery gives you a 33% chance to recover a special arrow after shooting it. There are special arrows in the game. There's knockdown arrows, charm arrows, fire arrows, blah, 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 blah. And arrow recovery gives you a chance to get those after you've used them. I don't know how important this is. Again, I've never used an archer, so I can't really speak to how good it is. But I can tell you, you can craft an infinite amount of items in this game. So, you know, I don't know how useful that is. Backstabber allows a character to backstab with daggers, knives, roundels, and rapiers. So this is really good for your scoundrels. And backstabbing is awesome. It does a ton of extra damage. So again, if you're going to make a character like that, grab this trait for sure. Bully boosts non-magical attacks by 50% against opponents that are slowed, crippled, or knocked down. This is absolutely amazing for really anybody that's going to do you know, anything other than magic damage. So I don't think this works with wands. I've actually never tried that myself, but I mean, it does say non-magical attacks, and wands are magical attacks as far as I know. So unfortunately, I won't be able to make use of this much, but slowed, crippled, or knocked down is pretty easy to do. Especially if you're doing like man-at-arms type skills. So if you've got a battering ram, oftentimes knocks your enemies down, as well as crushing fist. So if you pair this up with those abilities, you'll just do a ton more damage. So bully is amazing again for really. I'll be honest. Anybody that's using this should even work with bows. Again, as long as you've got a way to slow, cripple, or knock down, this is going to increase your damage. Courageous grants you immunity to fear, but you can no longer flee from combat. I don't think this is worthwhile at all. You can actually get immunity to fear through other means, equipment, or there's like certain traits that you can get that will make you immune to fear. So, or at least your two main characters. So, again, I don't recommend courageous. Elemental affinity lowers the action point cost of spells by 1 when standing in a surface of the same. So we'll just say you've got a hydrothurge and you've used the rain spell. As long as you're standing in a puddle, any other hydrosophist spells that you use will cost 1 less action point. Now, I honestly don't find this all that useful, but it can be. So keep that in mind. Escapist. This is kind of like, well, it even says here it's incompatible with courageous, but it lets you flee even when enemies are right next to you. Normally, if you want to try to run away from battle, you have to be a certain distance away from enemies, which can be sometimes difficult to do. But again, escapist allows you to just bail even if enemies are right next to you. Now, is it useful? Sure. A lot of times, if you just want to kind of get out of dodge and you're not looking real healthy, you can escape and heal up and then restart the fight. So escapist actually can be pretty useful. I don't usually take it, but again, it can be good. Far Out Man increases the ranges of spells and scrolls by 2 meters. I think this is garbage. I don't think, because, and the reason why I think that is because talents, you don't get very many of them throughout the course of the game. And I think that there are certain talents that are just amazing and certain talents that are garbage, and I think that Far Out Man is one of the worst ones. 5-star Diner, same deal. I don't actually recommend this one. Doubles the effectiveness of food. Now, I'll be honest though, I don't ever really use food. I don't like crafting things that I don't feel like I need, and food is one of those things. So that's not to say that it's not worthwhile, but I just don't like to do it, so I don't ever use it. But it does double the effectiveness, so sounds pretty good. Know-it-all, I love. Know-it-all decreases everyone's attitude towards you by 20, but gives you 1 extra point in intelligence. So, people's attitude towards you is generally influenced by, well, know-it-all, as well as if you donate anything to them, you'll increase people's attitudes towards you. If your attitude, or if people's, or someone's attitude towards you falls enough, they will outright attack you, which can cause major problems. So one of the ways that you can do that is by stealing and getting caught, or openly attacking people. But it's usually pretty easy to avoid that kind of stuff. But I am going to put a point in know-it-all because I want that extra point in intelligence. I think that's definitely worth it. Alright, so next up is Leech. Heals you when you're standing in blood, and it's incompatible with Comeback Kid. I actually don't really like Leech that much. It's not the worst thing ever. And actually it's kind of cool because when things attack you, generally, your blood's going to go flying. So you can actually, oftentimes Leech will trigger right after someone hits you, so that's kind of interesting. It's good and bad. I don't particularly like to use it because it's kind of like I don't want to, or I should say I don't like to depend on it to heal me, but it can be a nice little bonus. Light Stepper gives you +2 perception bonus for detecting traps and secrets. This is kind of cool. I'd rather have the just +2 perception, but unfortunately Light Stepper only affects the detection of traps and secrets. That's not to say that it's not good. I just think that there are better talents, and it's tough to justify putting a point in here. Lone Wolf. Alright, so Lone Wolf. Generally, your party size is going to be 4. Your main character, each one of your main characters is going to have what you basically is considered a companion. Unfortunately, though, if you go with Lone Wolf, you lose that. Now, I actually don't really like Lone Wolf because of that reason. I think that, as cliche as it sounds, there's strength in numbers, and the more targets you have, the better. But Lone Wolf gets you a 70% bonus to your base vitality, so that's a huge health increase. And then you get 2 bonus points to your turn action points, and maximum action points, and an extra ability point on level up. So you get a lot of bonuses by going with Lone Wolf, but I'll be honest, I don't think that it's worthwhile. Again, because of the reason why I stated earlier, I think that there's strength in numbers, and yeah, I just again, I don't. I guess if you want to challenge yourself, go ahead. That might be something fun. But anyways, all right, Magician gives you an extra use of a wand skill. I think this is completely worthless. Wands generally only have 3 charges, but this will give you an extra one, and it requires 1 point in wand to even use. But again, I think that's worthless. My precious, every time you're hit or get hit, your gear has a 50% chance of not losing durability. Again, I think this is completely worthless. Basically, it's free to repair your gear as long as you've got 1 point into blacksmith, and there's tons of gear with 1 point of blacksmith on it. So again, I think this is worthless. Pack mule, same deal. It doubles the amount of weight you can carry. Just sell your stuff. Don't try to lug around a bunch of or spread your stuff around. Give it to your other characters. Worthless in my opinion. Pet Pal enables you to talk to animals. Now, only your main 2 characters can use Pet Pal. There are a lot of animals in the game that give you extra experience if you've got the Pet Pal ability. I don't think I'm going to start out with this, but again, it can get you extra experience, so sometimes useful. Pinpoint. Grenade throws will never miss again. If you like using grenades, grab this, because using grenades, especially if you don't have this, they'll oftentimes not go where you want them to. So this is kind of useful for that. I actually don't like grenades, so I don't bother. Politician, I think this is worthless. Gives you 2 points in charisma, but you lose a point in intelligence. I say that I think that this is worthless because I like having my intelligence. And the 2 points in charisma I don't think is worthwhile. Again, any time that charisma is useful, you can just save your game you know, when you go to make a dialogue choice. And if it doesn't turn out the way you want it to, you just reset your game. Simply put. All right, moving on. Scientist gives you a bonus point in blacksmithing and 1 in crafting. This is amazing, again, for your crafter. Specifically, I always go with Jahan, and he already comes with Scientist, so I don't recommend this for any of the main characters. Again, I think Jahan already has it, so good enough. Stench decreases everyone's attitude towards you by 25, but melee opponents will find you less attractive in combat. So this is great for, say you've got a weaker defensive caster, or maybe an archer or something like that, and if you're rolling around with a tank, well, Stench is kind of nice. Decreases everyone's attitude towards you by 25. So generally, you're not going to want to trade with this. With that character, or if you take this and try to trade with characters, they're just not going to give you as much money. Again, pretty irrelevant, but this can be a good talent to grab. Walk it off. Reduces the duration of statuses that have a bodybuilding saving throw by 1 turn. So, like knockdown. I'm not going to list off all of the different statuses. Bleeding, those. They're the more physical, I would say, status effects. So it reduces the duration of those by 1 turn. This is actually really good. I don't know why I don't think I've ever taken it, but that's good. What a Rush. I actually really like this one. Increases your turn action points and maximum action points by 2 when your vitality is below 30%. So this one can be good. It's kind of funny that I like this one so much, but because normally I like the talents that are active kind of all the time. But again, this is only when you're 30% or below. And it only increases the maximum, and it gives you 2 extra. Again, anytime your vitality is below 30. I don't know why I really like this one so much. It's not that great. Being below 30%, I mean, granted, it happens a lot, but it's a situational talent, so it's again kind of weird that I like it as much as I do. Zombie lets you heal from poisons, but causes damage from regular healing. Now, this is a tough one. You can actually kind of make this one work, but I don't like this. Again, if you're throwing poison around and stuff, it makes sense. If you're using a lot of like poison grenades, that sort of thing. And I'll be honest, I mean, enemies do poison you a lot, so this one can be good. But unfortunately, it makes it so that regular healing will actually deal damage to you. So that's why I don't particularly like Zombie. All skilled up. We can't get this until level 3, but it gives you 2 extra ability points. I actually really like this one. It's kind of a nice little boost when you get to level 3. Anaconda. Increases your damage with crushing weapons by 10%. So, and there it says requires single-handed one. So this is good for your tanks. So, a tank that uses a club, basically. It's good for that. Avoid opportunists. So this is kind of good. It depends, though. So it gives you the ability to evade attacks of opportunity. Now, attacks of opportunity basically happen whenever you're standing next to an enemy that has that ability. So attacks of opportunity are basically it's basically an attack that you don't have to use AP for, but it only activates if the target is moving away from you. So like, they're pretty brutal because again, it doesn't cost you any AP to make those attacks, and it happens basically on your enemies. So like basically, if you have it, if you are able to make attacks of opportunity, which I think you need the opportunist. Where was that? There it is. Okay, so it requires Man-at-Arms 1. So basically, it gives you the ability to perform. Let's just say that you have this ability, Opportunist. Obviously, it requires Man-at-Arms 1. But basically, what happens if you're equipped with, and I think you have to have melee weapons for this. I'm not positive on that. But basically, if an enemy is next to you and it tries to move away from you during its turn, there's a chance that you will trigger this attack of opportunity, which will actually attack the enemy one time as it tries to move away from you. It's an amazing talent. It's one of the best ones in the game. Again, if you're using, again, I think it's only melee weapons. I actually haven't tested that, but again, it does require the Man-at-Arms one to do those. But again, it's fantastic. It's especially great for like a tank or a physical damage user that needs to get up close and personal, because as the enemy tries to move away from you, you take a swing at them. So again, really great talent. But let's go back to avoid opportunities. So basically, this is the opposite, where if you have this and you try to move away from an enemy that uses attacks of opportunity, you won't get attacked. So, or gives you the ability to evade those. Bigger and better. Requires level 5, gives you 1 extra attribute, a point to spend. This is kind of nice. Usually I don't really like talents are rare. It's hard to get talents in the game, so you have to really consider whether or not you want some of these. Comeback Kid is amazing. When an opponent would land a blow that should kill you, Comeback Kid will leave you with 1 health as long as you had more than 1 health left. Absolutely amazing ability or talent. Medora starts off with this talent. There, if you notice, it's incompatible with Leech. I think that this outshines Leech by far. But the requirement is Willpower 5. So this is great for tanks. I mean, it's great for everybody, but 5 points of Willpower is extremely hard to come by. But again, Medora and Medora is one of the characters that we recruit. She gets this automatically, which is just broken. It's so good, which makes her a natural tank. Demon. Character with Demon has an extra 15% fire resistance, but takes a 15% penalty to water resistance. In addition, the maximum fire resistance is raised by 10. So with Demon, it's actually really easy to be able to, I shouldn't say it's really easy, but you can start to absorb fire type damage eventually if you've got enough fire resistance. And then again, by increasing the maximum fire resistance, again, you can actually start to heal from fire damage. Now, I've actually never used this, and there it requires pyrokinetic 4. So that's tough to actually get to that, but it can be really good. And there, if you notice, it's incompatible with Ice King. So Ice King is the opposite of this one, and we'll go over that in a minute once we get there. Elemental Ranger. Arrows will inflict bonus elemental damage depending on the surface you're standing or target is standing in. So, kind of nice. Kind of a nice little bonus. Unfortunately, though, it does require Expert Marksman 5. So, again, just extra elemental damage if your target is standing in something. So, that's a good one. Glass Cannon. 4 extra recovery action points, but your total vitality is decreased by 50%. That's a huge hit. So it really reduces your health, but it gives you an extra 4 action points per turn. So, kind of nice. I don't know if it's worth it. I usually don't go with this. And then if you notice there, it's incompatible with Lone Wolf. The combination of those two would be probably pretty broken. But it requires level 5. So, again, if you hit level 5 and you're like, hey, let's try it out, go for it. But, be prepared because it's going to be really easy to kill you. Gorilla increases the attack damage while sneaking by 50%. That's kind of interesting. I actually don't really use the sneaking command at all, but again, that's kind of interesting there, where you can kind of like surprise. I think it's actually pretty good for bow users and stuff, so you can attack while you're sneaking and start a fight. And that'll again increases your attack damage by another 50%. So kind of cool. All right, Headstrong. Gives you 20% bonus against being frozen, stunned, petrified, and knocked down, but requires Scoundrel 5. So probably not going to get this one unless you're going heavy Scoundrel Tree. But if you do, it's probably worth it. 20% is a pretty big bonus. Hyperopia makes you farsighted, causing your ranged attacks to be precise at long distances, but inaccurate when your target is close by. I can't speak to the effectiveness of this. I guess it is exactly what it sounds like, though. The farther your enemy is away from you, the more accurate you are. But when stuff starts to get up in your face, then you're probably going to run into problems. Again, I've never actually used this one, so again, I can't speak too much about how effective it really is. Ice King, complete opposite of Demon, here where it gives you an extra 15% water resistance, but you take the 15% penalty to fire resistance. So again, with enough ice or water resistance, you'll actually be able to absorb water damage. So again, I don't know if this one's worth it or not, but possibly. Ironhide. All right, 3% times Man-at-Arms extra elemental resistance. So, being that you have to have Man-at-Arms at level 5, this should translate to 15% elemental resistances across the board. So, that should be, again, fire, water, everything, all the resistances. Although I shouldn't say all the resistances. It specifically does say elemental. So again, but if you're at Man-at-Arms 5, this is great for, especially if you're a tank. It just seems to make sense. Lightning Rod makes you immune to stun. This is actually really nice if you've gone heavy into Aerothurge. So maybe should be obvious. This is going to be more for your casters, or a caster if you've specialized specifically in Aerothurge. But again, pretty nice. Morning Person, when resurrected, you revive with full health. I don't know. I don't really like this one, just because why die? But bodybuilding 1 is required. Opportunist, we already went over. This is amazing for any of your, especially melee characters. Or, it requires Man-at-Arms 1, and that's a pretty cheap cost. You can get this right off the bat if you, are going with a Man-at-Arms. Parry Master. I really like this one specifically because I have a lot of characters, or usually go with characters that have dual wielding. The requirement is dual wielding 4, but it gives you 10% block chance when dual wielding. So again, if you are a dual wielder and you've got the dual wielding up to 4, I think this is absolutely worth it. Picture of Health, 3 times Man-at-Arms Vitality. So this just gives you a bunch of extra health. And obviously there the requirement is Man-at-Arms 2. Sidestep, 10% extra chance to evade hits. The requirement is Expert Marksman 4. So again, if you're already going deep into Expert Marksman, you might as well pick this up. 10% evasion is always good. Sidewinder removes your defense penalty when flanked. Again, this is more for your tanks. The requirement is Man-at-Arms 5, but it does remove your defense penalty. So there is a defense penalty when you get attacked from the side. So I assume that's from the back as well. Slingshot adds a 5-meter distance to your grenade throws. Good, I guess, if you like throwing grenades around. I do not, so I don't find this worthwhile. And it's kind of odd that the requirement is Man-at-Arms 1, but okay. Speed Creeper. Speed Creeper moves at normal speeds while sneaking. I don't think this is useful, but only because I don't ever sneak. But it does really speed you up, and it requires only sneaking 1. Stand your ground. Character cannot be knocked down. This is great. Fortunately, you have to go heavy or 5 bodybuilding to get there, but being immune to knockdown is great. Swift-footed, 10% movement bonus. I don't think this is useful. Requires Scoundrel 2. I guess, typically anybody that's going heavy into Scoundrel probably is going to need to move around the battlefield quicker, but I don't know that this is really worth it. It might be, though. Thick Skin gives you extra armor equal to your Man-at-Arms ability plus 5. And the requirement is +1, or requirement is Man-at-Arms 1. So again, this is, I guess, really good for tanks. Man-at-Arms ability plus 5 to your armor. So, I don't know. Good for tanks. Anyways, Voluble Mage grants you immunity to mute, and that requirement is willpower 5. I don't know if there's another way to get you immune to mute. I don't think so, because again, there are traits in this game that that you'll pick up, mostly based on kind of dialogue options. But I don't know if immunity to mute is one of them. But incredibly useful for spellcasters. It's gonna stink to be muted. You're not gonna be able to do much. Weatherproof, I think, is amazing. Makes you immune to environmental effects. The requirement is Geomancer 5, though, so that's... I mean, it's a great reward for going deep into Geomancer, because it's kind of tough to justify Geomancy for other reasons. But, alright, I need to figure out what my last one's going to be here. Really tempted to go with What a Rush, but I'm also tempted to do Walk It Off. Pet Pal would be good too. You know, if I wanted to get some extra experience from that, but I think I'm gonna save that. If I decide to do Pet Pal, it might be later. Yeah, I think it's got to be between Walk It Off and What a Rush. I think I'm just gonna go with Walk It Off. Yeah, sounds good. All right, skills. So let's talk skills a little bit. So battering, these are all the man-at-arms stuff. Battering ram is amazing. I've already kind of talked about this one a bit, but 80% chance to set knockdown for 1 turn. That'll increase based on your strength. Unfortunately, though, it does require a melee weapon to even use. There it says knockdown makes a target unable to move or act. Damage dealt depends on your main weapon's damage rating. Okay, so this is more based off your main weapon, apparently. Although that's kind of weird that it says that, because my 2 weapons there say, you know, the description at the top does say 4 to 6 fire plus 4 to 6 air. So that's a little odd. Anyways, Crushing Fist. This one's great because you can use it at range and actually doesn't have a weapon requirement. Sorry. There it says 100% chance to set knockdown for 2 turns. The AP cost is 4. Saving throw is bodybuilding, so you know, if your target has a better bodybuilding saving throw, well, it's not gonna work as often. Knockdown may start and be able to move or act. Yeah, so pretty self-explanatory there. Cure wounds, immediately heal yourself or a nearby target for 28 vitality. This is great for your tank if you just need to, you know, heal yourself. You can actually cast this on other targets as well, but the radius is really small. There, if you notice, the range only says 3 meters, so you got to be really close to use that on somebody else. Divine Light sets warm status and decreases target's willpower and bodybuilding within the spell's area of effect. So, Divine Light can be great for if you plan to follow it up with some other ability that goes with the, you know, bodybuilding or willpower saving throw. So, like, a good combination would be something like a Divine Light first and then a Crushing Fist second. Because, again, you're going to reduce the bodybuilding with the Divine Light and make it more likely for your Crushing Fist to knock the target down. So, and that lasts for 3 turns. So, kind of nice to know, I guess. Encourage I kind of like. Especially, this is great on a tank. It increases target strength, dex, intelligence, and constitution stats by 1. So, and then it lasts for 3 turns. So it just kind of it generally is going to increase the damage of your allies. There, if you notice, the range is 15 meters though, so you know, people have to still be somewhat near you in order to use this, or in order for it to hit them. Melee power stance is pretty great. Unfortunately, there, if you do notice, it does require a melee weapon to use. And then it's got it gives you a 20% damage bonus as well as a 20% movement bonus, but it does reduce your chance to hit by 20%. So, you know, it's a double-edged sword. Increases, you know, it's actually really great for when you need to move around. So actually, kind of one of the neat things that you can do with this, since it does not cost any AP to use this, you could start out your first turn and go into melee power stance, and then if you need to, move up, closer to your target, and then turn it off. Unfortunately, though, it does have a 2-turn cooldown, so I don't know. I think this is generally a good one to just stay in. I believe there's also a melee defensive stance, so that'll be another skill that you can get later that does kind of the opposite. It reduces your damage and movement, but increases your defense. So, anyways, all right, so let's get into the expert marksman stuff. So first aid here says cures bleeding, crippled, and diseased, and heals the target for 10%. So that's a really weak heal, but it also does get rid of some of those status effects. I don't know how much I like this, and it does cost 3 AP to use, so it seems a bit expensive. The range is not that good. It's only 10 meters. But again, it's, I guess, a good way to get rid of some of those statuses. Range power stance. Almost exactly the same as the melee power stance, except it increases your damage with bows and crossbows. And then it actually doesn't increase your movement rate. I just noticed that. So it does give you the extra 20% damage, though, but it reduces the chance to hit by 20%. So again, that's another kind of double-edged sword. You can go for the extra damage, but you could completely miss. So that kind of stinks. Ricochet. Fire a normal arrow that does damage and then forks off to the next target up to 4 times. So this is kind of like a multi-target bow attack. So as long as enemies are close enough to each other, your arrows will ricochet. So kind of cool. Short cooldown there, and then it's got a 15-meter range, so the range is really good on that. Treat poisoning, cures poison. Target gains 100% poison resistance for 2 turns. So not only does it cure your poison, but you get the 100% resistance for 2 turns as well. And then it's pretty cheap on top of that. Unfortunately, though, the range is tiny. So this is great for using it on yourself. Basically, it's got the same range as Cure Wounds. So, all right, anyways, those are the available expert marksman skills. So let's get into Scoundrel. So this is the first one, Fast Track, become Hasten for a short while. So there's a chance to set the Hasten status for 2 turns. It only costs 2 AP, but it also, let's see here, so Hasten says it boosts the target's maximum AP by 3, starting AP by 3, and then recovery AP by 2. So that's actually kind of nice, especially for using this before combat starts is kind of nice. Unfortunately, though, it does have a really long cooldown, if you notice there. It says 12 turns, but it also improves movement speed, it says. So that's a pretty decent ability. Obviously, by having more dexterity, that'll reduce the cooldown on that. So Lacerate, inflict bleeding, does 23 to 35 slashing damage. So that's a bleed, just deals damage over time. Pretty good stuff, especially for your Scoundrels. Unfortunately, though, it does require a dagger to use this. Depends on your weapon's damage rating. Okay. Precise Incision weakens the target, deals 23 to 35 slashing damage. This is another one that actually requires a dagger. I do want to say one thing, though. The good thing about Fast Track, as well as Walk in Shadows, is there's no weapon requirement for those 2 abilities. So actually, both of those abilities are kind of good for everybody, to be completely honest. Let's go back to Precise Incision. So the weak status lowers the target's damage by 50% and strength by 2. So it's really good for reducing, an enemy's damage that they'll do to you. So unfortunately, though, only useful for the Scoundrels. But still, it's a really good skill. Walk in Shadows. This is one of the best abilities that you can grab at the beginning of the game here. So it says 100% chance to set invisible status for 5 turns. Now, that's only a 100% chance, I think, if you've got 10 dexterity. So being that I'm going to start out with 6, I'm only going to have a 60% chance for that to be successful. That being said, though, I don't typically use this in battle, which it actually can be useful in battle for, say you've taken a lot of damage or something and you need to and you know your enemy is going to be acting next, and it can be a good way to just, you know, remove yourself from the battle, you know, momentarily, to maybe allow one of your other characters to heal you. But again, it does set invis for 5 turns. So the other useful thing about that is you can actually go invisible with well, really with anybody, but it can be a good way to get to your enemies without being seen. So again, you know, pretty useful, and it's also useful outside of combat for stealing. By going invisible, you can literally just steal things right in front of people's faces, which is probably the one thing that I use it for the most. So again, I'm going to actually grab this because I love that ability. All right, so next, these are the pyro skills. So okay, this first one is Burn My Eyes. Target gains a temporary perception bonus and cures blinded. So it boosts your perception by 2. So this is actually kind of useful, and actually it lasts a long time. 100% chance to set it for 10 turns. So this is great for casting on your leader or anybody that's going to be trying to run around and find traps and whatnot. It also is good in battle though as well. Again, for the same reason, because it just boosts your perception. Burning Touch. Really bad range on the touch abilities, but it does deal fire damage, and then it's got the 100% chance to set burning. Again, I think that's with, it's probably with 100, or sorry, with 10 intelligence. So all of these are, you know, going to be reduced cooldowns, that is, as well as success rates, you know, boost based off of your intelligence score. The saving throw on this one is bodybuilding. So that being said, if you were to use, say, Divine Light and then follow it up with Burning Touch, you will increase the chance of setting that burning status, because again, Divine Light reduces bodybuilding. Flare. Alright, so this is a better, I would say better than Burning Touch because it's got good range. It does deal, you know, the 11 to 13. It looks like it does the same amount of damage, and it's got the 100% chance to set Warm. Warm can burn targets that are already warm. So if a target is already warm, it'll actually, you know, set that burning status. So again, this is a great combination with Divine Light, because Divine Light sets the warm status. So following, you know, Divine Light up with Flare, you know, deal that extra damage, and then instead of just setting to warm, it'll actually set to burning. So again, a really good combination there. So you know, if you've got like a tank or something that's got the Divine Light ability, you can start out with that and then hit him with Flare. You can target terrain to create fire surfaces. So that's the other kind of cool thing. If there is a oil slick on the ground, you can use the Flare ability and target that oil slick, and you know, set it on fire. Otherwise, you can evaporate water with it or melt ice, and it can explode some clouds, specifically poison clouds. You can actually make those clouds explode. So kind of a cool skill. I'm kind of surprised there's only 3 of those. Anyways, Avatar Frost. So we're going into the Hydrosophist abilities now. It says make a target immune to being frozen, which is great, and then melee attackers can get frozen. So it's almost kind of like a, you know, water armor, I guess. It does increase your water resistance by 25, but it reduces your fire resistance by 25. So again, kind of a double-edged sword there. Last 3 turns, and then it's kind of nice, like I had mentioned earlier there, that melee attackers can get frozen. So anytime you're actually attacked by someone using a melee weapon, there's a chance that they'll be frozen. Freezing Touch, much like the Burning Touch there, it's got a really bad range. But it does have the chance to set to frozen for 2 turns. So the good thing about frozen is the target's unable to move or act. But unfortunately, though, it does gain the increased armor rating. Rain, again, one of the more useful abilities in the entire game. So this is going to be able to create water surfaces. And it'll set the wet status on anybody that's in its range for 5 turns. Wet, by going with wet first and then using something like Freezing Touch, you'll freeze your enemy. So it creates puddles though, which is kind of nice. Also, it douses fires and makes characters wet. Wet makes targets less resistant to air spells, but more resistant to fire spells. It's kind of interesting how the different abilities kind of interact. I love the fact that it creates puddles, especially because I'm going to be using characters that have wands. Puddles are pretty useful for if you've got electric-based wands, or sorry, air-based wands, because they will actually cause the stun status, because it'll kind of electrify those puddles. So again, pretty useful spell. And again, there's a lot of times where your characters are going to end up burning and on fire, and that way you can just use a rain spell to put them out. Regeneration, one of, well, it's the best base healing spell in the game, I would say. Heals 17 vitality on a target for 3 turns. So not only does it heal, but it heals over time. And then it's got a pretty short cooldown there, if you notice, 5 turns. Having more intelligence as well, I was going to say as well as more points into Hydra Sophist will reduce that, but I don't think that's the case. I think it's only off of intelligence. And then the range is 12 meters, so really good range. It's clearly going to outclass things like Cure Wounds. Alright, so Aerothurge is next. Freezes a target, or sorry, this is Bitter Cold, and freezes a target, so it's a 100% chance to set frozen status for 2 turns. The saving throw there is bodybuilding. This is not one of the times, though, where I would say that this would pair up well with the, excuse me, with the Divine Light, because Divine Light's going to set warm, and then I believe that this would then not freeze your target. Alright, so Shocking Touch, again, just like the other touches, or I should say elemental touches. Really short range, but it does have a chance to stun. Now the saving throw is willpower, so the higher your intelligence is, the more likely that you're going to land this, as well as if you're able to reduce that willpower. Range again, unfortunately, is only 3 meters, so you basically got to be standing right next to him. Teleportation, again, one of the most useful abilities in the game, just because of the sheer amount of different cool things that you can do with it. So if you want to, say, get an enemy away from you, you can teleport them away. If you've, say, electrified a puddle and you want to drop an enemy into it so that they get stunned, you can teleport them into it. If one of your characters has overextended and you think that it would be worth it, because keep in mind teleportation actually does deal damage as well. But you can actually teleport your characters out of danger. I don't necessarily recommend that one, but it can be useful. Otherwise, you can teleport an enemy next to one of your characters so that they don't have to move as far to hit them. Again, the amount of uses for teleportation is nearly endless. It's just a fantastic ability. Again, one of the more useful ones in the entire game. Thunder Jump. Alright, so jump from one target to the other, hitting a maximum of 2 targets, stunning them, and dealing 8 to 8 air damage. So this is actually pretty great. I think that Thunder Jump is kind of an interesting one to put, or to give to like a tank or like a melee character. The reason being is that you're only going to need one ability point, and then, again, you'll have to actually buy this if you don't start with it. But it's a great way for your characters to move around and deal some damage. Unfortunately, the saving throw is willpower there, and it's got a really long cooldown, so it's not like you're going to be able to use this constantly. But again, it's kind of an interesting way to move around. It does cost 5 AP though, so that's kind of a tough price or a steep price to pay just to kind of get around the field. But again, you do have that chance to stun, so it's kind of nice. All right, so moving on to Geomancer. First spell here is Bless. Removes Curse. Curse basically does the opposite of this. It reduces your chance to hit, whereas Bless boosts chance to hit by, it says plus 30 for 5 turns, so it lasts a decent amount of time too. This is a great ability, especially for like melee users, or not even just melee users, but physical damage-oriented people. Missing is incredibly annoying. And Bless will reduce the chances of you missing. Again, it lasts for 5 turns too, so that's great. And then it looks like the cooldown is only 6 turns, so you can use it almost right away after it's fallen off somebody. Boulder Bash. Alright, so Boulder comes crashing from the sky, dealing earth damage to anything within a 1 meter range from impact, and creates an oil surface where it lands. So this is great, especially in combination with like a pyro, because you can create that oil surface and then set it on fire. So those go together really well. Midnight Oil does the same thing, except it doesn't deal the immediate damage, but it does create an oil surface. So it says their oil slows down characters and can be set on fire. The slow actually is nice, but the fact that you can start stuff on fire is, I think, even better. Summon Spider. This is your first, or the earliest summon that you can get. I love summons in this game because they basically create an extra target for your enemies to attack. Here, if you notice there, it says it summons a level 1 spider in a 10-meter radius. The 10-meter radius is pretty great, so you got a pretty decent range, so you can summon it right in front of enemies if you want to, or whatever. But unfortunately, the AP cost is pretty high. The cooldown is short though, and it lasts as long as the cooldown. So here it says the spider's fangs deal piercing damage and have a 10% chance to poison its target, which is kind of nice. It's also resistant to poison attacks itself, so it can walk through poison clouds and not take damage. The spider has a special attack that can weaken as well. That's pretty great, and it's immune to blinding attacks. But unfortunately, you can only have one summon at a time. That's fine. But basically, this is just a great way to set another target out on the field and kind of draw some fire. So that's why I like it. Alright, so moving on to Witchcraft. Witchcraft is an interesting school here. Malediction weakens and curses an enemy. So not only does it curse your enemy, which lowers the target's hit chance, but it weakens them as well, so it lowers the target's damage by 50%. That's just a really great weakening ability. It should probably be pretty obvious from that, but yeah, you kind of get 2 for 1. The saving throws are willpower and bodybuilding. I think so it probably makes sense that cursed is on top, so that would be the saving throw with willpower. And then you've got the weekend, which is the bodybuilding. Alright, so Oath of Desecration. This is another absolutely great ability. 100% chance to set Desecration for 3 turns. So Oath of Desecration deals 40%, or your target deals 40% more damage when they've got this buff. Again, I love this ability. It's, 40% damage is huge. Really cheap AP cost, only 3. Unfortunately, it does have that really long cooldown, although that will be reduced with more points in intelligence. Vampiric Touch. Alright, so this is another touch ability where obviously the target needs to be right next to you, but not only does it deal damage, but it heals you as well, so this is a great ability for a mage that finds a enemy right in your face. 6 turn cooldown, again reduced by intelligence, and a fairly cheap AP cost of 4. Alright, and then everybody gets this ability. It's called Staff of Magus. Staff of Magus is basically a ranged ability that is elemental based. It's only usable while you've got a staff equipped, and the type of damage that it deals is based on the staff. Basically, there's fire stabs, water stabs, air stabs, and earth stabs, and it'll do exactly the type of damage that that staff has. It can be great for if you've got a fire staff and there's an oil surface on the ground. You can use Staff of Magus on that oil surface to start it on fire, and so on and so forth. So, great ability. All right, so I think I've got. Nope, I do need to put one more skill here. I think I didn't grab my heal that I wanted to. There we go. Okay, so this character's done. Now I am going to go over to the second character and talk a bit about what was it there? Leadership. I wanted to talk a bit more about what it exactly does as you put more points into it. So I'm actually going to do that right now. Let's remove, what do we need to remove here? Yeah, we need to remove the abilities, so let's take this off. Scoundrel Witchcraft, and you can get one more out of Sneaking and Boring. Personality. Alright, so leadership here. Let's see here. Alright, so level 1 leadership boosts initiative and damage, and then if you notice there, level 2 bonus initiative, damage, and chance to hit. And then looks like level 3 initiative, damage, chance to hit, and crit chance. So more points in leadership just keeps getting better and better. There's a lot of gear that have the leadership ability on it, specifically helmets. I think generally you can, well, I shouldn't say it's a lot. You can, I think, only ever get one leadership out of your helmet. But there are some other pieces of equipment that do have leadership. I know there's a lot of wands, or I should say wands will often have leadership on them, which goes really well with my setup. So I actually do really like leadership. I don't usually start out with any points into it, just because, again, I usually rely on my gear. But if you've got one character specifically designed to sort of be your buffer, I would say, buffer slash healer, that leadership is a great, thing to invest in, I guess I would say. Alright, so I need to put points back in before I can change. Oh, I messed this up. Anyways, that's pretty much going to be it. I think I've spoke enough about what I wanted to speak on. Again, I would say that there's just a lot of abilities that I don't think are worth putting points into. Again, I think anything into personality is a waste of time and points, short of leadership, which we just went over. Craftsmanship, again, I don't recommend this for your starting characters at all. Same with nasty deeds. I think that there are just specific characters that I think that are good to do that with, and not do that with your main characters. So anyways, hope this guide was helpful, and hope you join me for more. Thanks for watching.